Hi there, and welcome to this training session on why to sell to corporates now. I'm going to introduce myself and then I'm going to tell you why you should think about selling to corporates now and why there has never been a better time. I'm Cara Devaney, and there are three main things that I do that I want to share with you. So the first is that I help entrepreneurs figure out how to work with large corporate organisations. And it's really values driven work for me. I want to see entrepreneurs earning what they're worth, breaking the feast and famine cycle, and I want to see a more diverse pool of entrepreneurs and small businesses in the supply chain of corporate organisations. But to do that, I help entrepreneurs work with corporates by helping them get together a strategy, helping them figure out a plan to implement that strategy. We help with the implementation, and quite often I make some introductions to them to corporate clients. And part of the reason I'm able to do that is because after a 20-year career in corporate, I founded a global consultancy. So I'm the CEO of Sea Change International Consulting Limited, and we work in 8 countries across 3 continents, mostly in the English-speaking world, because that's where we tend to do business. We work with some of the biggest corporates in the world, and we love that side of the business too. I'm also a speaker at conferences, webinars, events and seminars in the UK and internationally, and I speak on a range of topics. What I love at the moment is that the international sessions and the UK sessions are back to being in person, and there's nothing beats an in-person event for when you're doing a conference. And I'm also now an author. You may have seen that this year I published an Amazon best-selling book called The Gap in the Middle, which is all about how you can work with the big organisations, even if you're a small business. So enough about me, what we're going to talk about in this session. So I'm going to talk a little bit about why you might want to sell to corporate companies and why you want to do that now. Then a little bit about what you're going to sell, who you might sell to, and how you could get started. So if by the end of this training video you think, oh, she's right, this is the time to sell, this is the time I should get into working with corporates, but where do I start? Then I've got a little bit of a hint to get you started at the end of this. So stick around. So why might you even want to sell to corporates in the first place? You might be in one of 3 groups of people that tend to watch my content or come along to my training sessions. Either you're what I call corporate curious, so you think that might be of interest to you, but you're just not sure. You're either not certain whether you want to work with them, whether they want to buy from you, or whether you haven't quite figured out what you might offer, but you're certainly curious and you could see some benefits. The other is you definitely want to do it, but you just don't know how and you're not sure where to start. And then there's a third group that quite often come into our group, which are people who are selling to corporate from time to time, but they haven't really figured out a way to make it consistently happen and keep it flowing. And I actually work with lots of people who work in corporate organisations who struggle with that. So lots of small businesses do struggle with pipeline management. But why might you want to work with corporates in the first place? So let me give you a little bit of a story here about what happens in corporate organisations. So when you're in a corporate organisation, you have large budgets and you have a lot of buying to do. And what happens is you get a little bit caught up in just working with the same old people time and time again. So quite often if you're a director or a senior manager, executive at a large organisation, you'll have a need that you need fulfilled by your supply chain. And you'll go to your buying department and say, I want to spend this amount of money on this thing or to solve this problem. And they'll give you the names of who they have on their list that might want to sell that to you. And then they'll get in touch with them for you, or they'll put a notice out publicly that will say, we would like to buy X thing. And what happens is you quite often get the same people winning that work or bidding for that work. And after a while, you kind of think, I kind of know what I'm getting there. It's just going to be the same old solutions to the same old problems. And sometimes that might work. Not everything do you want maverick ideas or innovative ideas, but for a lot of things, especially people related situations or problem solving, you actually do want new ideas. So you sometimes get a little bit of supplier fatigue when you're just using the same old folk to do the same old stuff. So that supplier fatigue is a really good reason why corporate companies actually want to have you in their supply chain. So they're really interested in you because they know entrepreneurs bring a lot of innovation and creativity that's difficult to have in a corporate organisation. And some corporates are more creative than others. Where you've got a very low blame culture, you'll have a higher creativity culture. But in general, you're talking about large organisations where people are expected to comply with certain policy, procedure and values. And that actually creates a bit of homogenous mass, and that's a much more difficult environment to be creative in. So large corporates know that it's really actually quite a good thing to have smaller businesses come in with that innovation and creativity. Now, another thing you might not know about corporate companies, especially in the UK public sector, is that there is a government policy to spend £1 in every 3 in the UK of government spending with small and medium-sized enterprises, so small and medium-sized businesses. Now, that target is set at being for 2023. Before that, the target was to be met in 2022, 2021, 2020, 2019. I think you can see where I'm going with this. And the reason the date keeps moving is because people aren't hitting the target. Large public funded organisations have not been able to hit that target of £1 in every 3 spent with you guys. They do not too bad at getting into the medium organisations, but they don't do as well as getting into small businesses. And UK government want their money being spent, it's your money, taxpayers' money, and they want it being spent with small businesses for a really good reason. And that is not just that creativity and innovation piece, but because it makes financial and economic sense. So what they know is that small businesses are the lifeblood of the UK economy. So I don't know about you guys, but my money is not offshored in the Cayman Islands or anywhere else. Small businesses tend to spend their money in the origin country. So they tend to employ people, they tend to invest in the growth of their business, they tend to pay their tax, not always in time, but hey, the government gets a percent if people don't do that. So it makes real economic sense to be spending what has to be spent anyway to keep the country functioning in small businesses who support it in that way. And when you look overseas, we work in Australia, the US and Canada. All of those countries also have very similar policies. It's around about that third, it's between 30 and 35% that they have as government spending policy. Now, what you find is that quite often where government economic policy goes, private companies will also have similar targets. So they may not have as high a target, but a lot of large corporate organisations you'll see around the world will have in a policy either called their corporate social responsibility policy or their sustainability policy. In one of those two policies, they will quite often have statements about either their targets or their intention to work with small businesses. And some of them actually run training courses for small businesses to help them be suppliers to them, or they run meet the buyer days. They actually do quite a lot to bring small businesses into their supply chain. Now, in the US and Canada, you'll find as well that there's something called mom and pop stores, and people just have this cultural love of a family business. So whether you're thinking about exporting to those companies, countries, or whether you're thinking of having a company over there, you'll actually find that they've got an even stronger pull for small businesses. But at the moment, there's a lot of support for working with small businesses and buying from them. So one of the reasons that you might want to work with corporates is because they want you, they need you. Public sector, public funded organisations and private sector companies want you to be part of their supply chain. But what's in it for you? If they want you so much, what is in it for you? So one of the really good things about getting into corporate is once you're in that supply chain, you will get repeat business. So you might start working in one part of an organisation, and before you know it, another part of the organisation will ask you to work with them. Or you'll be asked to do repeat work. So if they like what you do, they'll get you in to do more of it. Also, what they'll quite often do is recommend you to other corporates. So that they will sort of pass you around as a preferred supplier, and people will start to see you appear in that world and think, oh, what is it they're doing? What is it he or she or they is actually providing? I'll go over and have a look at that. So it's a really, really good way to create a repeat business flow, because you want a pipeline of work. So as well as recommending you to other corporates, they'll recommend you to other departments once you're delivering good work. And they'll also purchase in bulk. And I want to explain a little bit about why. So If you think about consumers or about small businesses, when they're buying something like training or coaching, they're buying it in quite small amounts. So you're buying maybe for, one or two people. I'm not going to go out and enjoy a training course so much. I buy 10 of it, but that's the way corporates buy. Because when you're making a purchase from inside a corporate organisation, there's actually quite a lot of work involved. So you're not going to buy one thing or for one person at a time, other than maybe really senior services. So exec coaching, they might buy specialist amounts, small amounts of that if it's really specialist. But it's much more common for them to come to you and buy maybe a small amount at first and then start to bulk up your orders. So you could be in a situation where at the beginning of the year, especially if it's their new financial year, they actually buy enough from you that oh, that's actually 40% of what I need to make this year. But that's me already. You might know that's all your overheads covered, you're a little bit into profit, depends on your margins. But with corporates buying in bulk, it can give you a lot of security and really start to break that chain of feast and famine. So whilst they might negotiate rates with you, you know that by selling in bulk, you actually have less time that you have to keep making new sales. They'll also pay a higher price per session. So a business to business sale will generally have a much higher transaction than a business transaction value than a business to consumer sale. They pay the bills. You do have to find out when you're going to get paid, because quite often they'll have a billing and a payment cycle, and you just need to fall in line with that. So they'll tell you when to invoice them and they'll tell you when you'll get paid. But no one in a corporate organisation really has any incentive to not pay you. They're not keeping the money. The money is very transactional inside large organisations. You also have the opportunity to collaborate on bigger contracts. So we do a lot of this, especially in our overseas work, where we work with a bigger partner and we provide part of the work. And that's a very lucrative piece of work for us, where we partner up with either similar sized organisations or bigger organisations, because we either bring specialism to what they do or we provide part of a bigger piece of work. And once you get into this world, you'll find you get lots of that to do, because people will see how what you does complements what they do. And that big piece, you reduce the feast and famine cycle. Once you get this working and you have work flowing into you all the time and you're managing it as a pipeline, you're not worried about making one sale and then one sale and one sale. You're in a much different space, and that's much easier to enjoy your business actually doing it that way. So if you want these benefits, let me talk to you a little bit about why now. Let me have a quick drink. So why now? The timing is perfect now. Corporates are still struggling to meet those £1 in every 3 targets. Those in the private sector who have got policy commitments are being monitored as to how well they're doing. It's not going as well as they would like, hence why they're pushing even harder and making more resources available to tempt you into their supply chain. Actually, a lot of organisations at the moment as well are really struggling for resources, and they're struggling for resources like you. They need more services provided because they are facing the impact of trying to have people return to either the workplace some days a week, to move to a hybrid model, or return to work when they've got significant issues around managing those two aspects. And that, combined with the Great Resignation, which is causing shortfalls in the workforce, is creating very difficult working environments for people. The inability for a lot of large organisations to recruit is at a level I have never seen since pre-2007. So since before the economic crash in 2007, there has never been such a difficult time for corporates just to fill the basic functions of their roles. Now, what that means is they need to bring more people into the supply chain to provide the services that they are not got their workforce providing, but it also means anyone who works in supporting employees through those times, so whether you're in wellbeing, recruitment, coaching, any of the healthcare aspects, what you're finding is that people who are inside those organisations where the resources are struggling, those people are overstretched, they're also struggling with return to work. And it's a bit of a toxic mix at the moment, that a lot of people in big organisations are just finding it very, very difficult. So that is a really good time for you to be there to offer solutions to those problems for them. The other reason it is a great time is because of remote working. Your opportunity to work across geographical boundaries is like nothing we've ever seen before. So a few years ago, if you've been saying, well, I want to work all over the UK, I would be saying, well, you have to really think about how much time you spend on travel for business development and work, because that eats into your work time. So therefore, how much profit can you make if you're traveling a lot? Now you can do a lot of that stuff without traveling. Not everything, but you can do a lot of it. Business development, we didn't really do before that much, other than in person. People are now used to doing that in virtual environments as well. So the opportunity for you to work across geographic boundaries in the UK or overseas is, it's exponentially exploded in the last 2 years, and that will not reduce. Some people will want you to come back and do some in-person work, but for small suppliers, a large element of your work being virtual or your interaction being virtual is absolutely accepted now, because people see that it's a cost-effective solution. In the UK, Brexit is also impacting, so that's also encouraging people to look at suppliers who are remote in a different way. So perfect opportunity. And then finally is the economic imperative. So I don't like to use too much fear mongering. There's enough of that. You can go and find fear wherever you want to find it. But the reality is that we're living in a time where the cost of living is rising and interest rates are rising, and that's quite widespread and it's known. And for your business to be financially resilient throughout those times, the best thing to do is have multiple income streams and have reliable sources of income and places where you can go to and potentially create more revenue at the times that you need to. And corporate is a perfect place to do that. Corporate organisations are always under pressure to do less with more, to do more with less. So they're always under that pressure anyway, but they're not going to stop having budgets. So during these difficult times where consumers are starting to tighten their belts, corporates will still have very large budgets and they will still have huge delivery expectations placed upon them. Now, you're actually going to be in a perfect position where you can offer them a lower cost option than a lot of their current suppliers, but you would still actually be charging more than you charge to consumers. And that's actually the perfect match. So they're looking for the same quality of solution, but they'll be looking for more competitiveness and higher price competition within their supply chain, at the same time as you're looking to enter a market where you're saying, actually, I don't have the overheads of a lot of the other suppliers, but I can still deliver at that quality, but you also know that you're raising your rates well above what you charge to consumers. So that economic imperative is really strong on both sides. It's a win-win all round. So if you think that this is something that you really want to do and you want to get started, I just want to give you a couple of little hints. One is just a little bit about framing what you might want to sell to them. And then the next is about how you could get started. So what are you going to sell? In the language of corporates, you sell one of three things. You sell goods, which are physical items such as products and raw materials. You sell works, which are, well, the one in the middle is actually a railway that I helped build, but they're physical activities, building, assembling, repairing, plumbing, painting. And then the final one is services, so professional services, coaching, consultancy, training, and wellbeing, healthcare services. So you're probably in one of those three camps. I suspect most people watching this will be goods or services, but just be aware of that language, because when you start to promote yourself in this world, you want to be really clear what it is that you offer, and you also want to be able to listen for what they're asking for. So this is to make you aware of that language. And who are you going to sell to? So here is my tip for selling to people. The corporate landscape is massive, and I hear people sometimes get a little bit overwhelmed about where to start, who will want them, how will they choose them. And the thing I would say is be really deliberate and really intentional. Like, this is how I manage up my business in the corporate environment. I choose who I work with. That's not to say sometimes people don't phone up and say, hey, we like what you do, we'd like to work with you, can you bring us a proposal? That's great, of course, it's music to my ears. But I'm very intentional about the clients that I want to work with. So I figure out who do I want to work with, and then I go after winning contracts with them. And that just makes it so much easier than just putting material out and hoping for the best. So be really deliberate and be strategic. And then here is my 3-step process. And this is a little bit of a mind hack as well. So think about who you want to work with and why, and really reflect and probe yourself a little bit on why is it I want to work with them. And every reason, if it's your reason, is a good reason. Like if you're comfortable with it, if you think, actually, I know they pay the highest amount for my service and I need some money and this is a good way to do it, that's fine. Fiscal reasons are good. If you think, actually, I really care about the work they do, like I'd love to be part of it, great. Because that's my second point, is check that your values align with that company. So big corporate companies will publish what their values are, but look at how you see them behave. Listen to if you know anyone who's worked in those organisations and see, is what they're saying in line with their values? And is that in line with your values? Because where you work for organisations that you have similar values or you believe in their values, you'll find it easier to win the work because you're in that mindset of it. And B, you'll actually enjoy doing the work more. And what I sometimes tell people when they think, oh, I don't know if that big company will want me, is actually flip that round and think, the reason you feel uncomfortable thinking about that company, is it because you actually don't really like what they do? You don't really support some of it? Because if that feels strange for you, even if they seem like the most obvious match, don't work with them. Because you'll never get your space around the fact that you're supporting them do something you don't believe in. So just choose not to work with them. It's not that they're not choosing you, you're not choosing them. We have a list of people that we don't want to work with. And if they phone up, then we pass them on to other organisations and we recommend other people. Sometimes that happens because we're at capacity, but sometimes a potential client phones that we think they're not the people that we want to work with. We don't want to engage with them. And there are a couple of types of work that I specifically don't do, no matter what company does them, because I just don't believe in the work. And when you first start working to get into corporates, it is a little bit harder work making the first couple of sales. And if you're really motivated by having the same values, it actually makes it much easier. And then the third step is just confirm that match. So check that, okay, you know who they are, what they do, what they care about, you're aligned with that. It doesn't have to be an exact match, but you have to think, yeah, I can see why that matters. And then check that they either want what you're offering because they already buy it, or you know that you can show them why it solves a business problem that they've got. So just confirm that match before you then start trying to work with them. So that's the 3 steps. Figure out who and why, check your values match, and confirm that you've got something to offer them. And then once you've done that, get started. Here are my 3 simple steps to get you started. First one is you need to be on LinkedIn. It's free, it's where corporates hang out, it's where they shop, and it's where they're going to check your credibility. So they're going to look and see what you're saying on it. So have a look on LinkedIn. And I know some of our clients have had some great approaches actually because they've been putting pieces out on LinkedIn and people have approached them directly, some of their ideal clients. The next one is choose one company to start your research on. So pick a company or an industry on that list of who you want to work with. Look at what are their current objectives, their values, their priorities, and think about how what you offer helps them achieve that or solves one of the problems they're having, because that's what you're going to target them with. And then third is your network is your net worth. You already know lots of people who work in corporates. You probably know more people who work for big organisations than who don't. And a lot of them will be happy to introduce you. I'm always happy to introduce people that I know to corporate organisations because I know I'm helping solve that problem of they can't meet enough small suppliers. They need to get people into their supply chain. They need creativity. They need innovation. They don't know where lots of small businesses hang out because they're in the corporate world, not in the small business world. And you'll find lots of people who are also happy to do the same. So grow your network all the time. And remember that asking for a business to business introduction, it's quite a transactional thing to do. And people are okay with that because they know it's about business. You're not asking a favour really, you're just saying, hey, I'm interested in working with Large Corporate Limited. I believe you work with them or you know people. Is there any chance you'd be able to make an introduction? And when I worked inside corporates, I was always happy that people made those introductions because I trusted them to make the right ones. And now I'm always happy to make those introductions too. So those are my top 3 tips on getting started. Get on LinkedIn, think about who you're going to start researching, and grow your network. Your network is your net worth. So what's the first action you're going to take? Have a little think now. What's the first thing you're going to do? Because I can tell you that to work in corporate, action taking is going to be the key thing. Like this is a proactive piece of work you're going to do. You're not just going to say, I'm going to work with corporates now and suddenly they're all going to come running. You're going to put yourself out there into the world of corporates and say, hey, I hear you're looking for me to meet those targets. I hear you need my services. Here they are on a plate. I am ready to break my feast and famine cycle and work with you. But all of those things, and please don't use that exact language, but all of those things I'm going to start again. All of those things require you to take action. They're going to mean that you have to take the next positive steps. So think about what's the first action that you are going to take. So, quick recap. Why is it the best time to sell now? Because they have never needed you more. They have absolutely never needed you more. Geographically, it's easier for you to do it, and there's an economic imperative for you to do it now. So this is the perfect storm in the corporate environment for you to enter that market. It's absolutely the perfect time. And I really hope that if you're curious or it's something that you've been thinking about doing, that you'll start to take those actions and move forward now. Remember, think about companies, think about what you are going to sell to companies, and then think about who are you going to sell to? Who are you going to sell to? Try and find people who are aligned with your values because it's going to make you enjoy the work more and it's going to make it easier for you to sell to them. And one of your selling points is going to be, hey, your values are this. I actually really care about that. And that's a great opening gambit for speaking to them. And then finally, take the 3 actions. I'm just going to go back to that slide. Get yourself on LinkedIn, choose one company to start with, and grow your network. I hope that's been really useful. I hope that you really want to start working with corporates now that it is the perfect time. And if you're not already in my free Facebook group, do come and join that. It's called Entrepreneurs Getting Into Corporate. There's live tips in there. There are some guides, and you can always ask any questions that you want to ask, and I will answer them for you. So thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to seeing you in the corporate environment.